How much of your life do you spend consuming? Scrolling, watching, listening, buying, taking in everything the world throws at you? And how much of your life is spent creating, writing, building, making, expressing, giving something back? Most of us consume constantly, but very few of us create. And if we do, we rarely stick with it. But here's the secret. I don't think we're here to consume. We're here to create, to shape, to express, and to leave a mark. Because consuming changes nothing. Creating changes you. People feel most alive, purposeful, and authentic when they're creating, even if no one's watching. So if you've ever felt like something's missing, maybe it's this. Let's talk about the quiet revolution of making things and why creating, not consuming, might be the real reason you're here. Welcome back to Thinking and Being. If you like what you see today, please be sure to like and subscribe, as this will enable you to see more content like this. For the love of God! I plan to be around a while on YouTube, so your help is much appreciated. So real quick, usually I do a little snippet on what's new in the studio, but I'm going to talk about my videos real quick. You might be wondering what is with the super creepy intro animations that are in every one of these videos. And I also think, I kind of think the creepier the better. But here's what I do. I use a tool called LUMA AI, and there's a lot of video tools out there that takes an initial picture or initial image and deviates from that image in different ways based on the prompt that I put into the tool. And so with every video, I try to make a prompt that has something to do with the video or something to do with the theme of the channel. I give myself 3 tries to get an animation out of that, because it does take credits to do that, and I do pay to use it. At the end of 3 tries, I just go with whatever it gives me, and sometimes it's really weird and freaky, and sometimes it's almost perfect. That's the reason I have these kind of weird and creepy intro animations. But it's also kind of like the Simpsons couch gag. If you've ever watched The Simpsons, every episode has a different couch gag in the intro sequence. Oh my God, there's so many good ones. It's hard to choose which one is the best. I hope this type of animation in the intro video is yet another reason to look forward to my content. Today, I want to talk about consuming versus creating, and about how most of our lives is spent and incentivized towards consuming. The emerging issue being that your purpose here is more likely to create than to consume. And this has been on my mind because I started my life as a creator. When I was a kid, I did a lot of writing, drawing, and drafting. By 7 years old, I had written my first story, and I've written many since then, and I wrote many after that. By 10 years old, I had my own drafting table, so I was very much into architecture, so I learned how to draft using pencil and paper. I started my life by focusing on primarily right brain activities. Then it came time to choose a major in college as I reached adulthood. I chose engineering because I knew I would definitely make money. Liberal arts degrees and those kind of things were not a sure way of making money. So I chose the safe route as a consumer, using my left brain mostly. Now I'm at a point in my life where I have some options, and creation again is calling my name, because that's where I started, and to be honest, it kind of feels like home. And thus the reason for doing YouTube videos like this. So let's start with talking about what each of these things mean: consuming and creating. What is consuming? Consuming is taking in without producing. Taking in media, information, entertainment, food, products. It's passive, safe, and easy. Instant gratification with minimal risk. It feels good for a moment, but it rarely leads anywhere. You scroll, you binge, and you forget. It doesn't require you to change. It just occupies your attention. And then what is creating? Creating is building, making, expressing, offering something back to the world. Whether you're writing, building, cooking, filming, or designing, you're shaping something new. you're adding to the world. It's active, generative, and intentional. It's also vulnerable, often slower, but deeply fulfilling. To create is to engage with the world, not just to exist in it. So let's go back to my theory about why we might be here to create. Many belief systems view humans as co-creators, not just consumers. Joy, flow, and meaning often arise when we're building something. The universe evolves through creation. Maybe you're a part of that process. What if we weren't meant to spend our lives just taking things in? What if the reason you feel unfulfilled isn't because you're not consuming enough, but because you're not creating enough? When you look at things like spiritual and philosophical elements, many philosophies teach that expression is a form of soul work. To create is to channel something greater, to leave fingerprints on the universe. Consumption is simply survival. Creation is transcendence. So I talked about my story. I started my life being primarily creative, drawing, journaling, storytelling. I chose a logical, structured path, engineering, to ensure my survival and my family's survival. Now I tend to circle back to creativity because creating just feels more comfortable and it feels more authentic. But let's look at another quick definition of consumption, which I think we don't often take into account. Many 9-to-5 jobs today are the same as consuming. You're consuming company culture, consuming demands, consuming ideas, and letting corporate elements control your everyday actions. Just because you have a good job or high pay doesn't mean necessarily that you have equal creative fulfillment. It often just buys better distractions. So when your work doesn't allow ownership or expression, it's really just another form of passive input. That's why most jobs today are really just a form of consumption. So some words that make you think of each are, for consuming, scrolling, binge watching, following, liking, lurking, shopping, doom scrolling, snacking, reacting, accumulating, spectating, commenting, researching, and saving it for later. Meanwhile, creating, words that come to mind are writing, recording, drawing, coding, building, filming, editing, publishing, inventing, brainstorming, painting, sketching, designing, teaching, producing, and prototyping. So go ahead and let this list sink in. Which side, for the most part, do you live on? So one way to think about this is the inner conflict. We were born imaginative, but somewhere along the way, we were taught to trade that in for what's practical. Creating might not always make you money, but it does make you more you. Hey, real quick, one of the things I do in my videos is promote other people's products. And of course, I'm not getting paid, but I figure, number one, it's good karma. It might be a product that really helps you and you might actually need. And it's also great practice for when this channel gets monetized, which will happen very soon, of course. Today, I'm promoting a book which has a lot to do with today's topic. The book is called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. This is the book right here, and you may remember Rick Rubin from such hits as...
Thinking maybe we start a cappella with, if you're having girl problems, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. Hit me. Bam. Right into the first verse. I got the rap patrol. Yeah, that's.
But he's been around in the entertainment industry for a long time. It's a super easy read that you can consume in any order to get great tips to add more creating into your life. Some of the key takeaways from the book are: creativity is not a skill, it's a state of being. Rubin emphasizes that you don't need to be an artist to be creative. Creativity is about being open and aware and present. It's a way of moving through the world. Being an artist isn't about what you make, it's about how you see. So the way I see this is that creation isn't just output, it's a mindset shift. Even how you brew coffee in the morning can be an act of creativity if done with intention. Also, he talks about the process being more important than the product. Rubin insists that the creative journey is more important than the outcome. Chasing perfection or validation kills creativity. The key is to show up consistently, let go of control, and trust the process, just like I try to do these videos every week. And the key is to make things that you love and let the audience find it or not. So the way I see this is that consuming keeps you focused on finished things. Creating invites you into the mess. And that's where the real growth happens. Woo! That's what happens when you record a video when you're sick. All right, I'm good. And one more thing that Rick talks about in this book, this wonderful book, is that silence, stillness, and receptivity are where ideas live. Rubin advocates for quiet, slow, spacious living so that ideas can surface. Our modern obsession with stimulation blocks the creative channel. We receive ideas like radio waves, so our job is to tune in and not to force it. The way I see that is that consuming clutters the mind. Creating requires space. The more you scroll, the less you hear your own signal. So go ahead and check out this book, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I'll also put a link below to that book in the description. And now let's talk about how you might be spending most of your life consuming. We often fall victim to a modern consumption loop. Wake up, scroll, commute and listen, work, sleep, repeat. Most days are just strings of inputs. You work and then you relax with more screens. Creating gets squeezed out by endless, low-effort consumption. Your entire day can pass without a single original thought. Also, information overload can mean soul underload. Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, books, news, blogs. Great, so you've read tons of books. But if you don't do anything with that, what's the point? It feels like growth, but too much input with no output leads to stagnation. Also, I always go back to systems thinking in these videos. So if we look at this as a causal loop, imagine something like a consumption trap, which is a balancing loop disguised as reinforcing. So you have more stress, which leads to more consumption to cope, which leads to less energy, which leads to less creativity, which leads to more guilt or apathy, and then that leads to even more consumption. It's a loop that looks like comfort, but it leads to stagnation. When it comes to information and knowledge, we mistake consumption of knowledge for growth. Watching how-to videos doesn't mean you're doing the thing. Studying creativity isn't the same as creating. Knowledge hoarding is not equal to growth. I've watched 10 videos on painting isn't the same as picking up a brush. Endless input with no output makes us mentally tired and creatively empty. Also, we fall victim to emotional consumption and avoidance. We consume to escape. Things like boredom, anxiety, loneliness bring us back more into consumption. Emotional eating, retail therapy, shopping when you're bored, doom scrolling. All these things are dopamine hits with no substance. Consuming feels like control, but it's often a form of hiding. Consuming becomes a coping mechanism, but it never actually solves anything. When it comes to work, I talked about work being potentially a form of consumption. Most jobs are just a form of consumption. Many jobs today are extractive, not expressive. You take in meetings, tasks, rules, and deliver predictable results. If you're never asked to imagine, challenge, or invent, then you're really just consuming someone else's system. We also have a fear of creating. A lot of consumption is procrastination in disguise. We consume because we're scared to start, we're scared to fail, and scared to be seen, like I'm doing in this YouTube video. We also kind of have a consumption hangover. Too much input leaves you numb, not inspired. Have you ever binged for hours and felt worse afterward? That happens to a lot of us. That's not rest, that's just avoidance. So there's a cost of never creating because most of us are in consumption mode. You forget what your voice sounds like. You start mistaking watching others create for creativity, which it's definitely not. And then you feel numb, disconnected, and strangely unsatisfied, even when life looks full. Hey, another thing I do in my videos is I give a YouTube shout out to another content creator because without creators like that, I would not be inspired to be doing what I'm doing here. And today I want to promote one of my favorite YouTubers and content creators in general, which is Retro Recipes. And they are a couple that does videos about gaming, computers, old school technology, and retro culture that if you're like me and you grew up in the 80s, you're really going to enjoy that channel. And one of his best videos is about how he converted a Tesla Model 3 into the car from Knight Rider or KITT, Knight Industries 2000. And the video is great because it's very comprehensive step-by-step execution of how he did that. And it's just a great video. He has a lot of other content about that show, Knight Rider. And he does a great job screen matching old scenes from the show with what it looks like today, which you don't see that on any other channel on YouTube. So I'll put a link in the description below to the channel as well as to the video that I mentioned. And so please go check him out, as his videos will make you feel like a kid again. All right, so the third thing I want to talk about today is tips and ideas on what you can do to create more and maybe consume less. So from a systems perspective, you can sort of reverse the flow. So on the left, you have inputs. In the middle, there's you, and on the right, there's outputs. But the inputs could be, like Rick Rubin suggested in his book, you could take in ideas, emotions, experiences, and then there's you filtered through your fitness, clarity, and courage, which would create on the right outputs of expression, insight, and impact. So it's not about rejecting input, it's about processing it into something meaningful. Take the inputs in your life and process them into something meaningful. Start small and start daily. 5 minutes of journaling, one doodle or drawing, one voice memo, one sketch, one note. Creation isn't sacred. It's a habit, and so make it so. You don't need to make a masterpiece. You just need to make. Try creating before you consume, because we're always going to consume. Try this. Don't check your phone until you created something. A sentence, a sketch, a thought, a video idea, anything. Start your day as a creator, not as a consumer. Also, use what you consume. If you watch or read something, ask, what will I do with this? Inspiration without application is just another form of clutter. Whether you're a comedian, an actor, a writer, a YouTuber, everything in life is content that you can use. Also, give yourself low stakes. Not everything you make has to be brilliant or public. Sketch, journal, freestyle, build, just get your reps in. You don't need permission to create. Also, make time sacred. Set aside 30 minutes for intentional creation every day. No phone, no tabs, just you and the blank page or canvas, microphone, camera, or whatever. Treat it like a daily ritual. Also, it helps to build with others, especially with motivation. Join a creative group or community, even just online. Momentum can build when you're sharing your process with people who get it. And also, accountability is creativity with fuel. Also, you can reduce passive inputs. Cut your scroll time in half. Mute the noise, notifications, news, shallow opinions. Turn that off. Create silence so ideas have a place to land. Another thing you can do is build creative triggers. Pair creation with daily routines. Before coffee, write. After a shower, record those thoughts that you came up with while you were in the shower. Make creating a natural reflex, not some grand event. Another thing you can do is build a feedback loop, which can drive positive reinforcement. The more you create, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more confidence you gain. The more confident you are, the more you create. So this is a new reinforcing loop, and it's the opposite of the consumption trap. So reclaim your role as a creator. The world doesn't need another consumer. It needs more people who express, shape, and contribute. Create something today, not because the world needs it, but because you do. You're not just a user, a viewer, or a follower. You're a maker, a storyteller, and a builder. Creating makes you more you. Let the rest of the world catch up. With that said, it's your move. This week, create something, anything, a sentence, a sketch, a video, a plan. Get back into a place of using your right brain more than you typically do. Share it or don't. Just get it out of your head and into the world. And if this video sparked something in you, comment below what you're going to create. Subscribe if you want to make this shift permanent, or keep scrolling. But you already know how that ends. Thanks for watching today. My key takeaways from this episode are: consumption is not evil, but most of us spend more time consuming than creating. If consumption is your default mode, then you start shrinking instead of growing. And that's not why you're here. You don't have to be an artist to create. It's just about being engaged with life. You can actively shape it instead of just absorbing it. If you like what you saw today, please like and subscribe, as this will keep content like this coming your way so that you can use it to create. It's my goal to make this content entertaining and funny, insightful and educational, and maybe a little bit nostalgic. Stay tuned as we'll talk about topics ranging from consciousness to philosophy to physics. I do have a video coming up about the double slit experiment. We're also going to talk about the intersections between all those elements which affect your thinking and being. A few other videos upcoming, a video entitled Why You Have No Friends in Your 40s, what it's like working for yourself versus working for the man, and why our education system kind of sucks. But until then, keep thinking and being, and do not go gentle into that good night.